Tonight, the ballroom shimmered with the glow of chandeliers and the hum of power. Laughter spilled over champagne flutes. Polished shoes tapped against marble. And the air was thick with the kind of confidence only executives carry when they know the world bends to their decisions. In the center of it all was Rachel Miller, my wife. Her emerald dress caught the light as if it had been stitched with fire. She was magnetic. Every gesture calculated. Every smile commanding. She didn't just enter a room. She conquered it. People leaned closer when she spoke. Their laughter louder when she laughed. Their admiration written across their faces like schoolboys watching their favorite teacher. I watched her from the edge of our table, bourbon in hand, letting the burn ground me. 15 years ago, I married her when she was still a hungry sales rep with nothing but ambition in her eyes. I admired that fire, nurtured it, even loved it. But somewhere along the way, that fire stopped needing me. It grew into a blaze that burned on its own. And in this ballroom, I wasn't her partner. I was furniture. That truth pressed heavier with every passing minute. Men in expensive suits circled her like moths to a flame, while I pretended to listen to dull conversations about quarterly growth projections. I didn't belong to their world anymore. And they knew it. Then he arrived. Jason Cole, tailored suit, slick smile. The kind of man who carried arrogance like a cologne. Jason was younger, louder. The self-proclaimed rising star of Rachel's department. He spotted me, grinned, and called out across the room as if he owned it. "David, get over here." "Buddy," I could have ignored him. I should have. But something in his tone pulled me forward. Rachel's eyes flicked toward me. Polite, automatic. She slid her arm through mine when I reached her side. Her smile practiced, polished. The smile of a woman who had long since learned how to pose for every audience. Jason swirled his champagne and leaned in, voice carrying just enough to ensure every ear nearby caught it. "So tell me, David, what's it like being married to our rising star here? Must be nice having a sugar mama." The laughter came fast and sharp, cutting through the clinking of glasses. And then came the moment that seared itself into me. Rachel laughed too. Not the awkward laugh of a wife embarrassed by a colleague's crude joke. No. She laughed like she enjoyed it. The sound was a knife. Small but precise. Sliding under my ribs. Jason smirked. Encouraged. His eyes glassy with liquor. "Come on, man. What do you even do all day while Rachel's out here killing it? Netflix. Video games. Must be strange having your wife pay all the bills." Again. The laughter rose. A chorus of executives, each one delighting in my humiliation. I stood still. Expression neutral. Fingers tightening just enough around the bourbon glass to keep from shattering it. This wasn't the first time Jason had tried to get under my skin, but tonight was different. Tonight. Rachel's eyes sparkled. Not with defense. Not with discomfort. But with amusement. She was in on it. Her polished smile was no longer a mask. It was an admission. She agreed with him. For a moment, I let it wash over me. The jeers. The sideways glances. The sense of being reduced to a punchline. 15 years of marriage. Of sacrifices no one in that room could see. 15 years of building a life together. Only to realize in a single heartbeat that the one person who should have been my shield was standing with the crowd. Laughing as they threw stones, I glanced at Rachel, searching for some flicker of solidarity. A quick squeeze of the hand. A subtle shake of her head. Anything to say. Ignore him. "I've got you." Nothing. Her hand rested on my arm, but her grip was loose. Meaningless. Her eyes never left the crowd. And her lips curved into that perfect corporate smile. The weight of it hit me harder than Jason's mockery ever could. The laughter wasn't the wound. It was her silence. Her complicity. And in that instant, something inside me shifted. A part of me that had been dormant for years stirred awake. The part of me that remembered who I was before I chose to disappear into the background. Before I let her shine while I stepped aside, I took a slow breath. The bourbon burning like fire in my chest, steadying me. I didn't lash out. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. Because deep down, I knew this moment wasn't the end. It was the spark. Humiliation has a way of planting seeds. Seeds of clarity. Seeds of resolve. Seeds of reckoning. And as I stood there, the laughter still echoing around me, I realized something with cold certainty. Tonight was the last time I'd ever be the invisible man in that room. The last time I'd let anyone, especially my wife, treat me like a joke, because one day very soon, the laughter would stop. And when it did, every single person here would remember the moment the man they mocked finally decided to remind them exactly who he was. 15 years. That's how long Rachel and I had been married. 15 years of late nights, sacrifices, and compromises. 15 years of believing we were a team. Once. That belief was unshakable. When we first started, I saw her fire and I fed it. I believed in her before anyone else did. Back then, she looked at me like I was her anchor, her safe harbor, in a world that chewed people up and spit them out. But tonight, standing in that glittering ballroom, it didn't feel like partnership anymore. It felt like I was a relic, a trophy she'd long since stopped polishing, tucked onto a shelf and forgotten. The way she carried herself told the whole story. Rachel wasn't with me tonight. She was performing for them. Every gesture, every laugh, every flick of her hair belonged to the executives hanging on her words, not to the husband who'd walked through fire with her. She was building a kingdom, and I was nothing more than the wallpaper in its halls. Jason Cole kept circling, relentless. He leaned in again, smirk wide, the voice just loud enough to command the crowd. I mean, David, let's be real. While Rachel's busy running departments, what are you doing? Catching up on the latest daytime TV? Maybe writing a book called How to Spend Your Wife's Money? The laughter cut sharper this time. My bourbon stayed steady in my hand, but my jaw tightened. The words themselves weren't the blade. It was Rachel's reaction that drove it in deeper. Her laugh rang out, effortless, like his insult had been the best compliment of the night. That sound gutted me more than any of Jason's cheap shots. Because mockery from strangers is one thing, but betrayal wrapped in your wife's laughter, that's a wound that never heals the same. For a moment, I let my gaze rest on her. She was radiant, flawless under the chandeliers, and utterly unreachable. Her eyes sparkled with amusement, not with loyalty. In that second, I understood the invisible line between us had thickened into a wall, and she was standing on the other side with them. Jason raised his glass in mock salute. Come on, man. What's it like being a loser? Must be strange knowing Rachel pays all the bills while you play house. The crowd roared again, the sound bouncing off the marble walls. Rachel didn't flinch. She didn't protest. She didn't say, "That's enough." She just smiled, as if the joke was true, as if it was funny. That was the moment the switch flipped. Something cold settled in my chest. I'd tolerated Jason's arrogance before. I'd swallowed Rachel's dismissals, told myself it was easier to stay silent than to stir conflict. But tonight, their laughter unlocked something I hadn't touched in years. The man who refused to be dismissed. I looked across the room and found the CEO, Richard Grant, standing just a few feet away. He wore the same forced smile everyone else did, pretending to be entertained. But his eyes betrayed unease. He was watching closely, maybe sensing the current shifting beneath the laughter. I turned slightly, just enough for my voice to carry, calm, even, almost polite. Richard, tell me, how does it feel knowing the man your team is mocking is the actual owner of the chair you're sitting in? The words dropped into the room like a stone into still water. Silence. The clinking of glasses stopped. The background music seemed to vanish mid-note. Every laugh froze in midair. Every smile faltered. Jason blinked, his grin collapsing into confusion. What? Richard's face drained of color. His champagne glass hovered halfway to his lips, hand trembling just enough to betray him. And Rachel? Her arm slipped from mine. I didn't have to look at her to know the expression on her face. Wide eyes, parted lips. The shock of a woman who suddenly realized the ground beneath her had shifted. Then came the sound that cut sharper than the silence, the crystalline crack of her wine glass slipping from her hand and exploding against the marble floor. Red wine spread across the white linen like a wound, dripping onto the tiles where shards glittered under the chandeliers. No one moved to clean it up. No one dared. Every eye was either on me or on Richard, who looked as though I'd just placed a live grenade in his lap. The laughter was gone. The jeers. The mockery. The smug faces. They had all vanished in an instant. In their place was fear, curiosity, calculation, and in that perfect stillness, I knew what they didn't yet. Tonight wasn't just the night they tried to humiliate me. It was the night I decided to stop being invisible. The first crack had split the facade wide open. And from here on, nothing in that room, or in my marriage, would ever look the same again. The lobby was colder than the ballroom. The heavy scent of perfume and champagne had been replaced by polished wood and the faint bitterness of hotel coffee. My footsteps echoed against the marble as I headed for the revolving doors. But behind me came the sharp click of heels. David. Wait. Her voice carried urgency now, stripped of the easy polish she wore inside. Rachel caught my arm, spun me toward her, eyes blazing with disbelief. What the hell do you mean you own part of the company? For a long moment, I didn't answer. I let her hand rest against my sleeve, let her feel the distance in me, the steel that hadn't been there before. Then I met her gaze and spoke, softly, but without hesitation. You really don't know, do you? She stiffened. Don't play games with me. Explain. So I did. 15 years ago, Atlas Systems, my company, was on the verge of breaking wide open. Stratacore was drowning, bleeding money, about to fold. Richard Grant came to me desperate, begging for a lifeline. I gave him one. I merged Atlas into Stratacore, and in return, I took 90% of the shares. 90%. Rachel, I've been the majority owner of your company since the day you signed your first contract there. The color drained from her face, but I kept going. Every word deliberate. I let Richard run the show. I stayed quiet, invisible, because I wanted a different kind of life. I wanted you to love me for who I was, not for what I owned. So I stepped back, collected dividends, let them all think I was just retired, a nobody. Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her eyes searched mine, desperate for some crack in the truth. That's not possible, she whispered. I leaned closer, voice low. It's not only possible, it's reality. Every paycheck you've brought home, every promotion you celebrated, every deal you thought you'd won, it was under my roof, on my terms, on my wall. You've been climbing a ladder that's been leaning against me the whole damn time. She staggered back a step, her heels clicking against the polished floor. For the first time all night, Rachel Miller, queen of the gala, star of the boardroom, looked small. Her mind was racing. I could see it happening, the gears grinding as old memories rearranged themselves. The merger announcement she'd read about as a junior analyst, the quiet months when I seemed between things, the stability that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Puzzle pieces she had never bothered to fit together now slammed into place, each one more uncomfortable than the last. Atlas Systems, she murmured. That was you. I nodded once. Her voice dropped, thin and uncertain. All this time, yes. All this time. She turned away, staring at the floor like the marble itself might offer her an escape. So while I've been fighting tooth and nail to prove myself, I was working for my husband. You were building on my foundation, I corrected. Every late night, every closed deal, every triumph you thought was yours. You were climbing a structure I built, and I let you. I let you because I wanted you to succeed on your own terms. But tonight, my voice hardened. Tonight you showed me what you really think of me. A loser. A man living off his wife. You laughed. Rachel. Not because you were nervous. Not because you didn't know what else to do. You laughed because deep down, you believed it. Her eyes filled with something sharp. Fear. Guilt. Maybe even shame. But she said nothing. I stepped closer, my words deliberate. You've spent years treating me like background, an accessory to your rise. But here's the truth you can't outrun. You never climbed without me. You never stood on ground that wasn't mine first. And starting tonight, that truth isn't staying in the shadows anymore. Her voice cracked as she tried to summon defiance. Why didn't you ever tell me? Because I needed to know you loved me for me. Not for the money. Not for the company. Just me. She shook her head slowly. eyes brimming with disbelief. That's not fair. It's exactly fair. And now you get to live with it. The lobby fell silent between us, the weight of my words pressing heavier than the chandeliers back inside. She looked at me then. Not like a wife looks at her husband, but like a woman staring at a stranger she'd never truly known. And in that silence, I knew the wall between us was no longer invisible. It was real, solid, unshakable. And for the first time in 15 years, I wasn't the one standing on the wrong side of it. The house was quiet when we returned. Too quiet. Rachel retreated upstairs without a word, her heels sharp against the steps, her silence sharper still. I didn't follow. I walked straight past the kitchen, past the living room that suddenly felt like a stage set, and into my office. It wasn't the place Rachel teased as my man cave. This room was mine, in a way nothing else in that house was. Bookshelves lined the walls, oak, heavy and familiar. At the far corner, behind rows of ledgers, sat a false panel. My hand found the latch without hesitation. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside, stacked neatly, was the proof of everything I had just told her. Stock certificates, contracts, merger documents signed in Richard Grant's unsteady hand 15 years ago, voting rights clauses that left no room for doubt. I pulled them out one by one, spreading them across my desk like cards in a winning hand. The paper smelled of ink and time. Every line confirmed what I had always known but kept hidden. I wasn't a bystander in Rachel's world. I was the foundation it stood on. And tonight, the time for shadows was over. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in months. Mark Reynolds answered on the second ring. "Michael," he said out of habit, then corrected himself. "David, it's late. Everything all right?" I stared at the contracts under the lamp's glow. Prepare a full audit. Executive compensation. Corporate credit card use. Conflicts of interest. I want every corner turned over. Make it airtight. Mark hesitated. "That's a serious move." "It's the only move," I replied. "Tomorrow the game changes." When the call ended, I leaned back in my chair, the weight of 15 years of silence pressing down on me. But underneath it, something colder stirred. Satisfaction. Resolve. Tonight, they laughed at me. Tomorrow, they'd remember whose empire they had been mocking. The dominoes began to fall with the sunrise. By 9 o'clock, Mark's text buzzed my phone. "Jason Cole has been pulled into HR. Officially, it's about conduct at corporate events. Unofficially, they're looking into those contracts tied to his cousin's firm." I pictured Jason's smirk from the night before, the champagne in his hand, his voice ringing with mockery. Now, that same arrogance would collapse under the weight of paper trails and signatures. One pawn, already removed from the board. By mid-morning, another message. Half the exec team is called out sick. Not sick. Panicked. Guilty men always run first. By noon, the whispers had become a storm. Expense accounts flagged. Receipts questioned. Trips to Maui labeled as client strategy sessions suddenly looked a lot like family vacations on the company dime. Mark's voice came through the line, tight with suppressed satisfaction. "David, it's worse than we thought. This isn't sloppy bookkeeping. It's rot. Systemic. And it all points back to Richard Grant, the man who had begged me for salvation 15 years ago, was now scrambling like a rat in a sinking ship." Calls flew out of his office. His assistant darted down hallways, face pale. The board, once complacent, was restless. And through it all, I stayed silent, watching from the edges, letting the pressure build. Meanwhile, Rachel sat at her desk on the executive floor, watching the cracks spread. Every conversation around her cut shorter than usual. Every passing glance carried unease. The fortress she had fought to climb was trembling, brick by brick. And for the first time, she realized the tremors weren't random. They were mine. She called me once. Her voice clipped. Urgent. "David. What's happening?" "Jason's been suspended. The board is whispering. Richard looks like he's about to have a heart attack. Tell me this isn't you." I let the silence stretch before answering. "Sounds like a typical day at the office." "Don't play with me," she snapped. But I hung up before she could finish, because this wasn't about her panic. It wasn't about soothing her fears. It was about control. Reminding her, reminding all of them, that the man they mocked had always held the strings. That evening, I returned to my office at home. The documents lay where I'd left them, glowing under the lamp like relics of a forgotten empire. But they weren't relics. They were weapons. And tomorrow, I intended to use them. I picked up one sheet in particular. A clause buried deep in the merger agreement. The beneficial owner retains the right to assume direct control upon written notice to the board. In plain English with one letter. I could end Richard's reign. I set the paper down carefully, almost reverently. Tonight had been humiliation. Tomorrow would be correction, and Rachel would watch every brick of her kingdom crumble, one after another, until she finally understood the truth. She hadn't been building her own empire. She had been living inside mine. The next morning, the air in the city felt sharper, cleaner. Like the world itself knew something was about to change. I put on a charcoal gray suit I hadn't worn in years. It still fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for this day just as long as I had. By the time I stepped out of the elevator onto the executive floor, the tension was palpable. Whispers hushed when I passed. Eyes darted away, some with curiosity, others with fear. Richard Grant was pacing near the boardroom doors, his face pale, his smile thin and brittle. "David," he said, forcing warmth into his voice. "What a surprise. You didn't mention you'd be attending." I shook his clammy hand once. Didn't feel the need. He opened his mouth to reply. But before he could, the double doors swung wide. Inside, 5 board members sat waiting, their expressions guarded, their papers stacked neatly before them. I walked past Richard, calm, unhurried, and took the seat at the head of the table. Polite confusion flickered across their faces, then recognition. Patricia Wells, the longest-serving board member, froze mid-page turn. David Miller, as in Atlas Systems, the very same. I said evenly, "Let's begin." I opened the leather briefcase I had brought with me and began sliding documents across the polished table. Expense accounts bloated with personal charges, proof of contracts funneled to Jason Cole's relatives, receipts from luxury vacations disguised as strategy retreats. Page after page. The evidence spoke louder than I needed to. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is what your leadership has been funding. Nepotism. Waste. A corporate culture where mocking people passes as strength. And while you all laughed last night, I was holding the receipts." Richard shifted in his seat, his throat working. "If there have been irregularities, we can address them through proper channels." The proper channel, I cut him off, is the majority shareholder sitting right here. I pulled one final sheet from the stack. The clause from the merger agreement, effective immediately. I am exercising my rights as majority shareholder to assume direct operational control of Stratacore. I turned to Richard. "Your resignation is accepted. Security will escort you out before the end of the day." The words landed like a hammer. The room erupted in low murmurs. But not one person challenged me. They didn't dare. The paper in my hand wasn't just a threat. It was law. Richard's face collapsed in on itself. He tried to speak, but no sound came. Finally, he scraped his chair back, the noise loud and ugly in the tense silence. He looked around the room, searching for an ally, but none met his eyes. Shoulders slumped. He pushed to his feet. Security was already waiting by the door. For the first time in years, Richard Grant had no power, no leverage, no audience, only an exit. Patricia's voice cut through the quiet. "If you're assuming control, who will lead this company?" I didn't hesitate. Samantha Lee. Brows furrowed. Surprised glances exchanged. Samantha was a name buried deep in the org chart. A senior engineering director. Most of the board had barely noticed. But I had. She has built more of this company's real value in the past 5 years than this entire executive floor combined. She knows the product. She knows the people. And she tells the truth. Competence is the only qualification that matters now. One of the older men frowned. "She's young. She's capable," I replied flatly. "And that's the only thing I'm interested in." Silence stretched across the table. Then Patricia closed her folder slowly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You're right. It's time this company remembered what real leadership looks like. No one disagreed. I gathered the documents back into my case, snapping it shut with finality. This isn't just a change in leadership. It's a reset. No more waste. No more cronyism. From this day forward, Stratacore will be a company worth owning again. The murmurs shifted this time. Not with fear, but with reluctant agreement. Relief. Even. They knew the tide had turned. When the meeting adjourned, the board members filed out in hushed pairs, their whispers trailing behind them. Some glanced back at me with new respect, others with calculation, but none with mockery. Not anymore. As I left the boardroom, I passed Richard's empty chair. Just hours earlier, he had sat there smug and certain, a man who thought he held the reins. Now, the seat was nothing but wood and leather. Another reminder that power doesn't belong to the loudest voice in the room. It belongs to the one holding the papers, and for the first time in 15 years, everyone in that building understood who that was. The invisible husband was invisible no longer. The boardroom had gone quiet. The storm already passed. Papers signed. Leadership shifted. Richard Grant gone. The balance of power had tilted. And everyone in that building knew it. But some storms don't die in conference rooms. They wait outside, in the shadows. And when I left the boardroom, she was there, Rachel. She didn't speak at first. Her emerald dress from the night before looked wrinkled now, her shoulders tight, her jaw set. For years, she'd carried herself like a queen, untouchable, untamed. But this wasn't the Rachel the gala had worshipped. This was a woman caught between pride and fear, scrambling to hold together a crown that was already slipping. Finally, she broke the silence. Do you have any idea what you've done? You humiliated me. You betrayed me in front of everyone. Her voice trembled, but she forced it into sharpness. I was the one who built a career. I was the one who earned respect. And you. She shook her head, eyes burning. You made me look like a fool. I let her words hang there for a moment. Then I answered, calm, steady. I didn't betray you. Rachel, you betrayed me the moment you laughed when they called me a loser. She froze. The words hit harder than she expected. And for a second the defiance cracked. I saw the flicker. Fear in her eyes. Regret on her lips. Pride fighting to hold its ground. You don't understand, she whispered. It was a joke. Just a joke. No, I said firmly. It wasn't. Because when they mocked me, you laughed not out of discomfort, not out of obligation. You laughed because, deep down, you believed it. And that's the truth I can't ignore anymore. Her arms folded across her chest, as if she could shield herself from the words. So what? David, you're running the company now. You think that means you don't need me? I stepped closer, my eyes never leaving hers. I don't think. Rachel, I know. For 15 years, I let you climb. I let you believe you were building something of your own. But the truth is, every rung of that ladder was resting on my wall. And now, the wall is mine again. She looked away, her jaw tight, her breath unsteady. Pride kept her standing, but her silence betrayed the weight of it all pressing down. Then, softer, almost pleading, she asked, so what happens to us now? I didn't hesitate. Now, you have one choice left. Adapt, or get left behind. But you'll never mock me again. The words landed between us like a verdict. She flinched, but didn't argue. For the first time, she had no counter, no clever retort, no way to spin the story in her favor. She stood there, caught between the empire she thought she'd built and the reality she had just seen crumble. And I walked past her, leaving the silence to finish what my words had already begun. That night, alone in my office, I looked back at everything that had unfolded. The gala, the laughter, the glass shattering at Rachel's feet, the documents on my desk, the resignation in Richard's eyes, the board's silence when I took control. Betrayal doesn't just break a man, it remakes him. Last night, I was a punchline in their eyes, the invisible husband, the man mocked for living in his wife's shadow. But today, I was the man they answered to, The man who owned the ground they stood on. The man they would never laugh at again. Respect isn't given. It's taken back, and I had taken it, men. If you were David, would you forgive her and rebuild? Or walk away for good? Share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one.